the other thing that Jeremy talked about, John, which we've talked about already, John, it's February 13th, and the biggest offseason story, I already feel like we've talked about it ad nauseum, and I'm done with it. I'm like, all right, just get some clarity to this, please. AJ Brown, the Eagles will entertain AJ Brown trades at the combine is the other thing that Fowler talked about when it comes to the Eagles. Nothing new here. We're not breaking any news. This is something that's been talked about all year, basically. Your reaction to Fowler saying that about AJ and the combines?
Yeah, well, again, we mentioned when that came out on Super Bowl Sunday, and you had the report, well, the Eagles haven't talked about trading AJ Brown. I said, yeah, pump the brakes. Nobody's talking about trading anybody at this time. That's not how it works on the calendar, the NFL calendar. That'll start in Indianapolis. And what Jeremy, I believe, was talking about, the perception around the league is that the Eagles are going to trade AJ Brown, which has been the perception for quite a long while. That's where all the Diana reporting comes from that people hate, but is true. The rest of the league believes that the Eagles are going to move on from AJ Brown, the vast majority. Obviously, there's always different. Now, the Eagles, I'm pretty confident that they're going to try to talk him into playing one more season. But I do think here's the complication, and I mentioned this, I think, when BLG was on Wednesday. If there were no salary cap issues, and there wasn't such a problem from that perspective, I think the Eagles would move on from AJ Brown, because they don't want to deal with what they've been dealing with for the past 2 seasons. And really, you can go back to 2023 at the end of that season. I think they're tired of it. They're tired of it. But the salary cap stuff is real. And if you trade AJ Brown, there's significant repercussions to that. Either if you post June 1st it or not, you're going to lose significant cap space this year if you don't post June 1st it. And you can't do some of the other things you probably want to do. So that's the reason they're trying to work it out. So, but the foundation of it all is, I think they want to move on, but it's just not the best time to move on. And the rest of the league thinks, oh, they're moving on. So that's where we are, and that's where we have been with AJ Brown.
John, people refer to Howie as a cap magician, which I think largely he is, but how hard is it to move this contract? I mean, if you look at the list of contracts on the Eagles, John, I mean, there's 52, players on the active roster, 53 on the active roster, and there's, I don't know, 90 maybe in the organization as a whole at any given time. AJ Brown's probably the second or third hardest contract to move. How manageable is that from Howie's perspective? If it did reach the boiling point and they did decide to move AJ Brown.
Well, I mean, that's, they can move him if they want to move him. And that's the positive of Jeffrey Lurie. He's shown the ability to take on dead money, and he's not going to blink. A lot of owners would blink. So that's a positive, that he knows he can work with that kind of rope. But it's not good from a cap standpoint. It doesn't help from a cap standpoint. And this is the rare, when you sign guys early and you make that, normally Howie gets a lot of credit for identifying players early, getting a little bit of a break on the contract. But if it doesn't go the way you perceive it to be, and in this case, it's not from a performance standpoint, it's more of just a player being unhappy standpoint. But still, it doesn't work. And if you have to get out of it early, well, you're taking a big hit, and all of a sudden doing things early doesn't look good. So it's always a gamble. And if they have to move on, if they have to trade him this year, it will impact them in a negative fashion from a cap standpoint. There's no getting around it. It's better if you designate it post June 1st, much better. But there's no getting around the significant dead money, $43 million. That's a big matzo ball, as Jerry Seinfeld would say. And
Yeah, a big matzo ball, and you're not going to be a better football team. I mean,
and that's why that is the reason. Like, if this was the end of his contract and you didn't have these massive cap ramifications, I would say 99% he's out of here. And the only reason I'm at 50-50 and I toggle back and forth is because of the massive cap realities. And the Eagles have more things to fix. So they need as much cap space as they can get because they have to fix some things as well.
Interesting.
And plus, you got to replace AJ Brown.
Yes, I mean, there's like basically nothing about this potential move that's good for the Eagles, but you're gonna have to make do. If the player makes it untenable, I guess that's where it would reach ultimately. So, John, you still at 52-48 there that he'll be back or gone? Where's the scale today for Johnny Mac?
I think I'm dead even, 50-50. I think
Oh, wow.
50-50.
It's going to 50-50.
Yeah, I don't think, like I said, if you think about it, and that's why, because I started thinking about it when I was writing about it, and I'm like, if the Eagles didn't have these other issues, would they want to trade him or not? And to me, that's 100% they'd want to trade him. And that sort of is shifting my thinking a little bit. And that's why the rest of the league thinks they're going to deal him. And we're going to see if they're right. But one thing about Howie, he's not giving them away. So, that's another part of it. You have to get significant value in return. And that could be difficult as well because of the timing of if you trade him after June 1st, well, you're not getting a draft pick this year. And teams don't have the same malleability from a budgeting standpoint at that stage of the calendar. So a lot of things factor into it that make it difficult to move them. But this is, again, we were talking about Carson Wentz. Well, I wasn't expecting to talk about Carson Wentz so much today, but it's a similar situation in that, if a player, even a high profile player, wants out that badly, it's better to move them than have that unhappiness in the locker room. I think Mike Tomlin had a great quote. It was, we want volunteers, not hostages. I think every NFL team should operate with that mentality. In other words, if somebody doesn't want to be there, you don't want them there because it's going to, and that, to your point, I know you brought up the Kelsey stuff. That's what Kelsey was trying to say.
Yeah.
It's like, if somebody's unhappy, it's like a bad energy.
It brings the whole thing down.
Yeah.
Rising tide lifts all boats, and I guess you could say the opposite of that would be you're going to lower the boat.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of the framework of what Tomlin was saying and I think that's the best phrasing of it I've heard. You don't want hostages, you want volunteers.
It's a good way to look at it, John. This might be an extreme circumstance, but I'm bringing it up for a reason, and you tell me how unrealistic or unrealistic it is. I think there's definitely a world where the Eagles don't get back what they want for AJ, and they'll try and hold them because they got to deal with the cap hit. They got to deal with the dead cap. They got to deal with not being as good of a football team. They got to deal with trying to replace them. There's a lot of shit that comes with that. Is there a world where the Eagles try and keep AJ because they don't get what they want or whatever, and AJ would sit out or create a whole charade at the start of the season? Is that, in your eyes, is that possible? You have seen that in the past with certain players who maybe want a new contract or whatever. I don't think that's possible with AJ. I never saw it like that, but do you think that could be something we're talking about later in the offseason here, or maybe closer to training camp if the Eagles don't want to move him? Could you see something like that happening?
Yeah, I don't think so. You don't see it very much at all in the modern NFL because they changed the CBA and you get significant fines. And back in the old days, you'd get significant fines and then you'd waive them. And they say, all right, these coming in, you waive them all. You're not allowed to waive them anymore.
Right.
They actually uh, bargain that in. So that's the reason why you don't see nearly as many holdouts. Now, there's a couple, you can soft hold out, you can hold in. There's more hold ins where
Right.
guys show up and
Yeah.
they don't practice and they, claim my ankle hurts or whatever. There's a lot of that. Not a lot, but some. Um, but yeah, the old school holdout, there's no real advantage to it um, from the player standpoint. Uh, I can't imagine it getting to the point like, the thing about AJ, which also to what Kelsey said, he's so well liked. Everybody likes him um, in the building. Like it's not, oh, this guy's a pain in the ass. This guy's, it's weird. It's almost weird um, that you could create that much controversy and still be so universally well liked. Um, so I don't see that being. Of all the things that could happen, I think that would be the least likely.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Just wanted to bring it up in case it did reach that point, and we have some thoughts on it here on the record. I want to thank everybody for being here. A good first 50 minutes of the show. John, it's holding strong the phone connection right now for those just checking in. John had I get the text at about 7. I don't know what you texted me, 7:40. Xander, the Xfinity has collapsed. It is no longer with us for the day. I'll be joining you by phone this morning. So we appreciate you for doing it, Johnny Mac, and it's holding strong right now. I want to thank everybody for being here. Hit the like button. Drop your comments down below. Any super chats will go to the top. We appreciate all you guys for being here. John, next segment, segment 3 here that I want to talk about is kind of a continuation of the AJ stuff. I don't want to spend as much time in this as we just did the Fowler thing, but you brought it up. Jason Kelce yesterday spoke about the perceived lack of effort from A.J. Brown. I did think it was a relevant post by Jason, and then it blows up, and then he has to put out the whole
Poor
clarification.
Jason, man. Welcome to the media, my friend.
Yeah.
Welcome to the
So he
media.
basically said he's just unfortunately a player who allows his internal frustrations to manifest into his play, and it makes his play worse. It makes him play worse. It makes the offense worse. I don't think Jason's breaking any news there. I mean, A.J. Brown clearly didn't play as well last year, whether you think he declined as a player or whether you think he was not focused because of his problems with the offense. I think it was the latter, but you can think what you want. So Jason Kelce had to clarify it, John, on X. Like he just said, welcome to the media, Jason. And he puts, it seems people are taking this as a dig on AJ, which wasn't really the intent of the response. It was apparent that AJ was frustrated, and it's apparent that AJ lets that affect his play at times. That's frustrating to watch as fans and people on the outside. But it's more important that his teammates and coaches, for all of this external frustration, still love and only say positive things about AJ. That probably means that his teammates understand where he's coming from and that's what really matters. Blah, 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 blah. Basically, a big clarification from Jason Kelce. Your thoughts on that comment from Jason Kelce on AJ Brown?
Well, the first, and Jason doesn't need any advice from me, but I would tell him, look, man, I mean, people are going to ignore the context of what you say. It's just, it's a battle you can't win. The other day, how much have I talked? I'll use this example, Xander. How much have I talked to you about what the Eagles did in the past and Kellen Moore and I just said it again earlier in this show with, we have to see if Nick Sirianni's managing Jeffrey Lurie. I won't use manipulating and doing all these things in the offseason. He's going to go back to what he's always done, which is to win the game. Now, somebody left out the second part of that and said, well, you said Nick's going to just change and go back. they completely missed the context of it, but it's fine. You can't fight that. Um, so I don't think there's anything wrong with what Jason Kelce said. I think it was exactly right from a
Me
player's
too.
perspective.
I think he was 100% right. Yeah.
He was 1,000% right. I'm making up numbers. He was completely right. Um, And then he reverted back because a lot of people took it as a dig on AJ Brown, and then he's got to, So my recommendation to him is ignore the people who ignore your context. You're not going to win them over. I mean, they're not listening anyway. So that, from that standpoint, I think the original quotes, which was, he's just unfortunately a player who allows his internal frustrations to manifest into his play. Anybody deny that? It's obvious. And he makes him play worse, which he did this season. Makes the offense worse, which he did, which it was this season. So it was completely right. We've talked about it. I don't know how many times. AJ's frustrated, and it's affecting his play. That's fair. It's fair. There's nothing wrong with what he said.
No, I agree. Nothing wrong with what he said. Interesting though from Jason Kelce. And then John, the last piece here, and then I got a better topic for you here for hour number 2. This drama stuff, I want to put it behind us, but I do got to bring it up. Emmanuel Acho brought up yesterday. Like I don't know, this came off like a. I don't want to rip Emmanuel Acho because I actually kind of like Emmanuel Acho. I just think he does a good job at being in the media, which I get. Some people don't like how media people are and they try and get clicks, but I think for what it's worth, he does a good job at doing that. He talked about he was out in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl, and he was at the same Super Bowl event that Jalen Hurts was at, and Jalen was sitting in the corner not talking to anybody or something, and he's wearing sunglasses and he's on his phone. I don't know, John. To me, it came off like a jealous ex or something. Like I don't know. It just sounded weird when he said it. I don't.
To go back to your look, Acho does a nice film job, but yeah, he's a click. He's a click guy. I mean, he's a click guy versus Fowler or Diana Rossini, who are doing legitimate sourcing, and he's a click guy. And that stuff. I don't care. It just is.
Well,
And
the
you're
only
right.
reason I wanted to bring it up to you wasn't because I wanted to gossip about it or anything. You brought up the aloof comment earlier in the year, and if Acho is right and not making up shit, maybe this would put a feather in the aloof cap. Maybe
Well, he is aloof, and he or people perceive him to be aloof. And by the way, I think he made a concerted effort to be better at that this season. Ironically, because you know they had more success when he was really aloof versus uh, when he was trying to be less aloof. They didn't have as much success. So I think that tells you what it matters, which is nothing. But yeah, it is, and I'm glad you used that word. That's what it is. It's gossip, and it's not really relevance. It's like there's a big story with Casey Wasserman. I don't know, former NFL agent. I don't know if people have seen it. It's in the Epstein files. Ultimately, so anybody who's in the Epstein files, it could be significant. It could be insignificant. But and Casey's still like he's chairman of the Los Angeles Olympic Committee, so he's still got some big time roles in some of the agency, and some of his clients are leaving. And basically, his impact was in him emailing about an adult woman, not an underage woman, about untoward things. Let's be honest. But I mean, that's his personal life. I don't give a shit as long as he's not breaking a law. You know, that's gossip. That's gossip. That's not a story. That's
no.
gossip. And that's on a higher level. That's the only reason I went down that road. Two consenting adults, even if they're cheating on their spouses or vice versa, uh, you know, it happens. I'm not condoning it, but it's not a crime. And that's gossip. That kind of stuff is gossip. That's why I don't like to talk about it that much, other than to say, yeah, certain guys think he's aloof. But they probably think that of most quarterbacks, because quarterbacks are, put on a pedestal. Good quarterbacks, and there is some jealousy to that, I would say, in all cities that have good quarterbacks, because they're going to get a lot of hype and a lot of attention and a lot of endorsements and all that kind of stuff.
Agreed. Good response, Johnny Mac. I viewed it similarly as you there. Just wanted to bring that up.